Good afternoon. Hello, welcome to the fourth Beaver Trison Retail Masterclass, this year hosted at the Samsung King's Cross flagship store. And we're very grateful for their hospitality. It's obviously a fantastic day today. We've got to return back to in-person events, and we're delighted to have a few people here joining us in person. And of course, welcome to all of you out there on the internet. It's also at times like this that I wished I hadn't had quite so many beers, because TV adds pounds, they say. But let's not dwell on that. I'm very grateful to our speakers, some of which are with us today, and some which are joining us from various places, including sunny Cornwall. And we're going to be covering quite a lot of topics today, the theme being retail, the recovery of retail, how digital and digital signage can really help with that recovery. And I think even in rainy London, the times are looking a lot more optimistic. And I think it's an exciting time for retail. It's an exciting time to be in this industry, and it's an exciting time to be providing solutions to retailers and companies that are looking to enhance the experience. So we're going to have Damon Crowhurst, who's the head of digital, head of display for Samsung UK, and he's going to be taking us through some exciting topics, I'm sure. And then we're going to be joined by Darren Turrell, who's going to be exploring experience and how experience can really enhance the retail journey, the customer journey. And then Matt Beresford from 4D Human Being is going to be joining us to get into the psyche of retail and the spaces and the thinking that goes into how digital can really enhance that and the opportunity that exists for us when you walk into a store. I'll then be taking us through a little piece about the kind of current state of affairs, so I'm sure you'll all enjoy that. And then finally, we're very, very pleased to be joined by Lyndon Fraser and Will Smith from Google, who'll be talking about some of where Chrome is helping to support retail and bring the good times back. So, Damon, thank you for joining us again, and thank you for hosting us at this fabulous space. I'd like to pass over to you now, and you can enlighten us with all of your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, Pete. That does set me up rather substantially. I'm sure there are not too many jewels, but one of the things that Samsung is as a brand is a brand that crosses consumers, technology, and innovation. And of course, COVID came at a time that I think a lot of our businesses, integrators, retailers were all doing rather well. And unfortunately, it set everybody back significantly, but I think none more so than in the retail space itself. So, you know, we're standing here at King's Cross. Samsung opened the space 5 months before COVID arrived on the scene. This is probably the flagship space for Samsung in the world, and really we test and drive all sorts of innovation in retail here. And of course, one of the things we had to do when COVID arrived was adapt very, very quickly. So what I decided I'd do today is just share a bit about Samsung, a bit about our pedigree in the retail space, less focus on digital signage and screens, which is really what I know most about, but really give you a sense of where retail was going, and then what we had to do to change and adjust once COVID landed on the earth. Hopefully you'll find that informative, and I'll also address some of the things that we did here at KX to make that particular change. So as I said, Samsung is a fairly unique company in that we have a perspective on the retail industry that sits at an intersection between technology, consumers, and the retail experience itself. That gives us the ability to share insights that maybe other retailers don't get all elements of that particular puzzle. So how involved in retail are we? We have over 150,000 shops selling our products through our partnerships across Europe. We have prestigious brands such as Harrods and luxury stores that we have a concession in ourselves, which we run and manage directly. And then we also have over 31,000 stores and concessions of our own across the UK, Europe, and around the world. And then, of course, we're also a successful online retailer where we serve customers in multiple languages. And one of the most interesting things I saw once COVID landed was that we really had to up our game in that retail online space. Just as an anecdote, one of the products that I sell a lot of and have sold an incredible amount of in the last year and a half is your classic desktop monitor for working at home. We have sold, I cannot tell you how much more monitors in that period of time. Of course, traditionally, we would sell a lot from a B2B business model through our integrators and our partners. But during the time of COVID, we've literally transitioned to about 80% of those sales happening online, both through our e-store and partners like Amazon. And that is a massive shift from where we were previously. So with all those touch points of engaging with consumers, I think we have a fairly good insight as to what was happening in the retail landscape as we ran through 2018, 2019. And I'm going to touch on some of those initiatives within the physical retail store, and then share what happened once COVID arrived to places like Samsung's KX space. So just before COVID arrived, I think these were 4 key trends that our global marketing team were seeing within the physical retail space. Firstly, there was m-commerce taking more and more adoption with the consumer. Then we saw an improvement in what I would call the in-store physical experience. So really driving towards bigger brand experiences that make a consumer build loyalty for the lifetime value. Then we had shoppable media, and of course, holding it all together would be the enterprise IoT, where companies like Intel now are really making a strong play to bring connected solutions into the retail space. And that is only going to continue to evolve and be more and more important as we see a retail bounce back post-COVID. So one of my favorite statements is Kevin Plank, the CEO of Under Armour back in 2018, when he opened his new flagship store in Shanghai, said, 80% of my store must be about experience, and only 20% is about product. And I think that's where a lot of retailers were heading. And certainly if you get a chance to explore this space here, I think we very much fit a statement along those lines, where we were really focused on making this an experience destination. And in fact, when we opened the space, we didn't sell anything. We didn't even sell online. It was a conscious decision to make it a non-commercial venture. Of course, that may well have changed during COVID. So why expectations shifted in the consumer space? So, it's no longer good enough just to have products and transactions in a store. In order to build the trust and the loyalty from your customer, we really needed to see a shift, and this is what we were seeing pre-COVID, to really experiences and products in store that delivered a real tangible value in the shopping experience, but then post that shopping experience as well. There was many debates, and I've got some data on this as well, about the transition from the online to the offline. Some argued there was going to be a super accelerated, and either they were prescient about the coming COVID situation, or they were just being a bit too optimistic for the online space. I think it's not about a massive transition, it's about a joint solution, so that whenever you're engaging with your customer, be it online or offline, that the experience is one of what Alibaba refers to as new retail. So new retail means the integration of your online, the offline, logistics, and all the data across a single value chain. Bold statement, but the most important piece is how do you act on that data? How do you bring that data that you're capturing, tracking, and analyzing and bring it back to inform the retail experience in a physical store? And I'll share in a moment some of the data that we capture here at KX that we've then used to change the experience that all those 14 of us in here today have. So the online to offline to online transition, this graph was published back in 2019, pre-COVID days. It's a gentle, steady curve, roughly 2, 3, 4% every year. I think once we start to see the data post-COVID, that is going to be on an exponential jump. And I think the challenge that all retailers like Samsung and others who have a physical space is how can we bring the customer back into our stores so that we don't forever find ourselves at 35% on the offline. And that's a challenge. And one of the things that I think we'll see is we'll see the entry of customers like Boohoo in the UK, which was a solely online retailer, who have subsequently invested in a retail space and opening some retail stores. Those will drive your traditional physical-only retailers to up their game and be more competitive. And I think we'll also see other customers like Gravity, which is a company that has trampolines for kids to jump on. Historically in a park far away from any mainland retail, now opening stores in the centre of London in old Debenhams retail spaces and starting to do some initiatives around merchandising that maybe otherwise in the past they never would have. So I think that the transition is going to be challenging for traditional retailers. We're all going to up our games in the physical space. And I think the high street, as we refer to it in the UK, is going to see some significant changes over the coming 2 years. So there is hope. Whilst many people are doing everything online these days, myself, my daughter, my wife included, I think there's a trend there that millennials prefer shopping in a physical store. And that's not going to change. My daughter, the first thing she wanted to do when we were allowed out was to get back to the shops with her two best friends. And watching the physical change in a child that's 13 years old, from being cooped up during COVID to being let out and go shopping, doing the things that they would naturally do, clearly being physical in retail is important. So what does that mean? Focusing on immersive experiences. I think from a digital signage perspective, this is probably the most important thing that we need to think about for physical retailers. Helping them build an immersive experience that really drives customer loyalty. So there's three elements to that strand. Having an in-store experience that really resonates with your consumer means that you can bring your brand story to life in standout ways. I'm sure hopefully some of the video footage here today will show what we're doing, but as an example, I sell a LED display. It's not terribly exciting. We have it at the back, it's big, bold, and beautiful, but it doesn't inspire. So what we've added to that is a Formula One racing simulator that now lets a person experience a true real-life race around Silverstone whilst experiencing an LED digital signage canvas. And I think when we looked at the data, and this is really on another slide, but we analyzed the footfall in the store. And obviously pre-COVID it was phenomenal. Right now it's a lot less. But what it shows is that when we put a simulator in front of our wall, the average dwell time in the store has gone up by 7 minutes. But it hasn't changed all the other areas, just that area with a wall has gone up 7 minutes. So it's a meaningful change in the consumer behavior driven by a physical change in how we presented our solutions. Also, physical stores, very important. Make sure you remove the friction. If I have a phenomenally impressive online experience, but then I try and bring it into the store and it's clunky and the product that I reserved isn't there, your customer's not going to have that wow experience that's required. And then most importantly, there's a hell of a lot of data from a physical, online, offline experience, and using that to craft your experience in store is very, very important. So what does that give us? If we get it right, well, first and foremost, it helps us to attract new customers. Okay? People talk. If I have an amazing experience in a particular store, it's highly likely that I'm going to tell Peter about it and tell him he really needs to get down and try the Samsung simulator at KX. It also drives an increase in the frequency of visits if you get your experience in store right. Customers have come back here. Our data shows us that we have repeat visitors quite consistently. So someone comes down with their family, then the next week they come down with a friend, and the next week 2 other friends. So making it really meaningful and valuable increases the frequency of visits. Of course, it enhances customer engagement, and altogether that will drive sales and operations efficiencies. And Tanya, who runs the space, I can tell you, will tell you all about operational efficiencies once COVID landed. We still had to deliver the experience we wanted, but we had to do it in a way that was subtly different. And of course, if you get all of that right, you end up with a customer who's very, very loyal. The mobile division tell me that getting someone to change from an Apple to a Samsung or from a Samsung to an Apple is incredibly tough and is really the holy grail. But what it means is that when you do have that customer, you need to make sure that every engagement with a brand and experience is optimal and doesn't entice them to leave. So one of the things we do when we're engaging with customers who are looking at digital for the first time is help them understand that we have a digital display palette, and it covers all sorts of different elements that a customer needs to think about when implementing digital signage. I'm not going to go through all of them because it takes a bit long, but I'm going to pick 1 or 2. So first and foremost, retail is entertainment these days, more and more so. This space is all about being engaged. Pre-COVID, we were hosting events here every single day. Everything from yoga with mums and babies through to conservation forums where we hosted guest speakers about initiatives to clean the ocean, and of course, digital signage as well. One of my favorites, smart and engaging, is Dolce & Gabbana in Rome. I have to mention it because it's all done with LED, but unfortunately at the time not with Samsung LED. But it's a truly engaging experience with integrated audio, integrated scent. They have their own personal scent for the brand, and of course, huge amounts of LED. Now, what's clever here is only one side of that store is actually LED, the other is a mirror. So that helped to keep costs down, but make the experience absolutely exquisite and incredible. Also, of course, I think you need to be individual. A retail physical presence is really the best opportunity for a customer to engage with your brand. They can touch it, feel it, smell it, and learn all about it. And really that helps to build the lifetime value that each and every retailer is looking for. A really good example of that, done just pre-COVID, was Nike's House of Innovation in New York. Customers here can use the app to book an experience, order a particular product, customize it, and then make a collection to come and collect it at a time that's convenient for them. And I think there's a lot of digital involved here, and Peter will tell you in a moment, no doubt. Digital is a growing part of a retail physical presence, but only if it has value. And I think that's really what we as integrators in our business and suppliers have to show the value to the customer. Always, of course, it's important to be consistent. It's all great and well having a one-off flagship, absolutely awesome experience where everyone loves it, talks about it. But if the other footprint within your retail network doesn't touch a certain level of that, you're going to disappoint your customer on their entire journey. So it's important to be consistent across your brand, your physical presence, and of course your data analysis and capture. And you need to be convenient. Okay, 75% of people that buy something in a store have typically visited the website first. That's what David Gilbao from Warby Parker said. Warby Parker is an online retailer that just pre-COVID started to move very aggressively into a physical retail presence. And their key value proposition is making it convenient. Convenient comes in different ways. So, we've just opened Amazon Go, I believe 2 in the UK. I haven't been yet. But there, really, it's about getting you in and out as fast as possible, which personally is something that I really value when I'm shopping in a supermarket. The second convenience element is locations. So Uniqlo have deployed kiosks that dispense a jacket and a t-shirt at places like airports and train stations. So there's different elements to getting convenience right, but it considers time and it considers location. We always need to be transparent. No one goes shopping without having done a huge amount of online research and analysis now. So customers in this store are looking at their phone, looking on the web, checking the prices, looking at the customer reviews, and then, of course, post-purchase, so making sure that they're happy with everything. And if they're not, you can rest assured they're going to share it online. So everything we do from a mobile store perspective across the UK is designed to make sure that every touch point is positive, engaging, and informative at Samsung. Of course, we need to be helpful in stores. We have a strong team here of, I believe 16 people at any point in time, but we trained over 85 at the height of when we launched to be able to service our customers with absolutely the best first-class service they can have, getting the information they need, because the propensity to buy increases if we're happy. And then, of course, we need to be personal. There's a huge amount of data, and the customer these days expects us to be using that data in a meaningful way that makes my journey in your physical store more valuable to me. That's further enhanced by Bain & Co. They did some research which showed that if it was a personal experience, you have an opportunity to see a 40 to 50% premium on the sale price of whatever it is you're offering. Highly valued means highly paid for. And then the other analysis in their data showed that there were 2 times conversion rates if a customer felt that the me-commerce was meeting my expectations. So I'm just going to quickly highlight here what I think a future experience may look like. I've seen this from integrators in different ways. I've seen different elements of it deployed. I've seen almost 80% of it deployed, but I've never seen it deployed in its full across a full footprint of, say, 200-300 retail stores. So in the future, I think what we're going to see is, someone like myself going to a store, I'll get a message online, I'll find a nice jacket that I want, I'll go to the store, and on my way, my app will update and tell me, Damon, there's some fantastic shoes that go with that. Do you want to reserve those as well? We'll make sure that they're in the changing room when you get here. Of course, then I'll go into the store, and I'll walk around. The screens themselves might start messaging me because they know my profile, making sure that products in my size that are in stock are promoted on the screen. And then, of course, I will reserve that and go to the sales display and get more messaging that's relevant to myself. Then once I get into the change room, I'll get help from, I hate the phrase, but everyone uses it, Magic Mirror, which will let me know what other products maybe go with my jacket, maybe a pair of trousers that match. Anything that I want, I can touch a button and a sales assistant will bring it to me. And then, of course, when I've got what I want, I can head off to the checkout and be given the option to pay either via my app, card, or cash. And then, of course, once I got home, I might get a message that says, Damon, thanks for shopping today, 25% off on your next purchase if you come back within the next 10 days. And there are various technologies out there that integrate with all the digital signage systems that make that a very feasible experience. But for some reason, I don't think we've seen it deployed at scale. And that's really where I think physical retail needs to go next. There are many elements in bringing that to life. I won't dwell on them. Some, of course, as a technology vendor, Samsung has the ability to solve. But really, it's about working with integrators like Beaver Group and others who can bring all the different elements of a technology mix to solve that in-store problem. All right, now I'm just going to share some of KX and our learnings during the COVID experience. Okay, so I think you get a sense from that, just what the space is, what its intention was, and really how we utilized it in those 5 months before COVID arrived. So this was really designed to be a brand destination for millennials and Gen Z, giving them the opportunity to really engage with our brand, touch and feel it, get to know it, and hopefully become lifelong customers. And for 5 months, we had an incredible calendar that was absolutely rammed. This place was full all the time. The footfall was well beyond anything that we were looking for, and generally was proving to be a phenomenal success. Of course, then COVID arrived, and we had to look at our objectives. A lot less people coming through, if any at all, and an incredible investment in a space like this. So we had to move from being just a brand destination where we didn't actually sell anything in store to thinking about being an omni-channel retail experience where we could leverage the space, leverage the area, and leverage the brand to make sure that we could see the value in the space during a very unique period in all our lives. So how did that transition? Tanya, who runs the space, launched live video chat from KX. That's for all our customers who are browsing online in the UK, able to show them products in store over the internet. We launched a virtual support from KX, so a premium support service line that complemented our standard service and support line. We started doing live broadcasts here when it came to product launches. So we launched a Odyssey gaming monitor, which was live from here with some customers, and we launched a S21 phone. And then, of course, we added in 360 virtual tours of KX to our retail presence on the web. And these are all different things that we hadn't set out thinking that we'd be doing in 2021 or 2020. It's been phenomenally successful within the limits that you can expect, but we're excited to be back now. And one of the things I just wanted to touch on, I mentioned it a bit earlier, was we have cameras around the space, and everything is being analyzed from a footfall perspective within the data protection laws. But we really use that data because, as I mentioned, by adding a simulator in front of my Samsung wall LED, we've increased the dwell time there. Now, yes, it's a fun thing, and probably a 5-year-old kid is not going to buy a 100 grand LED wall, but what it does do is it makes the Samsung brand experience a lot more valuable around that particular canvas. So how do we measure our efforts? We have a scorecard that Tanya uses, awareness, consideration, sales attribution, and lifetime value. And during the COVID period, we transitioned to selling online. We started attributing customer visits to B2B sales, which of course is hard but very valuable. And we're at a point now where I think as we go back to real normal life, hopefully, or as close to normal as can be, we have a very good blueprint for whatever life may throw at Samsung KX. Well, lastly, just the most fascinating thing I found is that the profile of customers here pre-COVID and post-COVID matches perfectly. We haven't changed the customer. It's still the right people that we were after. They're coming in, they're coming back. And today, now that the pubs are open and we can be indoors drinking and eating, I expect that we're going to see the footfall come back to where we were pre-COVID days. So that's it. And lastly, I just want to thank each and every one of those partners, integrators out there. You know, no doubt the last 12 to 18 months have been phenomenally challenging for our businesses. We appreciate your loyalty as Samsung, and I'm hopeful that over the next 12 to 18 months, we can all bounce back and really do what we do best as an entity in the business world. Thank you.
Thank you, Damon. That's amazing, and completely echo everything you just said there about the bouncing back. I think it's a really exciting time, isn't it? What's striking about that very last slide that you had up on screen was the similarity, really, of those bar graphs and the return journeys, and the fact that actually when this all kicked off, I think everyone was expecting it just to shut down. And one of the themes of today is I think that it hasn't shut down. And in fact, if anything, we've learnt to really appreciate retail in ways that we never really truly did before. I know that I appreciate shopping more so than I ever did. So I just had a couple of quick questions for you, and we'll go to the audience as well. But you were just talking about the data and the importance of data. I wanted to just see what your thoughts were about how you can attribute the value there. And you started to talk about it at the end, but how do you take that kind of raw data of the hotspots and the movement of people within a store and then turn that into something that actually has value for a retailer and that they can apply a KPI to, and at board level can say, this means that we should do something?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best examples is, we see where people go in the data, and we know which are our hero products, and of course we want to drive you to our hero flagship that's launched in that week or that month. And knowing where to put our key products at the right time is massively valuable to us. So I think that's one key element that we've managed to utilize the data for.
Great. And, the mobile element and the mobile part of the journey, and clearly mobile is a massive part of Samsung. How do you see that linking into the business space that you're working in, predominantly with displays and LED? Do you see there's a convergence to those technologies, both in terms of the technology that Samsung's working with, but also in terms of usage?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, I think where we've seen lots of integration is with the CMS vendors out there. So, we will work with people like Scala, Four Winds Interactive, Digital Ninja, all of these products to help them do integrations to our displays with the system on chip that we have, as well as with their mobile phone devices. There's a company that we've done some really interesting stuff with called Velocity out of Northern Ireland, which is a full customer management platform for your online marketing that then ties into your digital signage CMS. And I certainly recommend any CMS vendors out there have a word with them. They've got something very unique.
Yeah, it's a big area of growth, isn't it? Now, I wonder if anyone in the physical space has any questions. Then perhaps we'll also see if there's any questions coming in from our online audience. And Adrian's manning the phones for us over in Technology Corner. Adrian, do we have anyone with any questions?
I have a question. Excuse me, take my mask off. Neon is Samsung's artificial intelligent thingy, which we've seen at CES. Has that any role to play in what you've done here, or do you see it having any role to play in the future?
At this moment in time, it hasn't. We haven't done anything from a display perspective with it at all, and I don't actually know if it's being integrated here, but certainly it's something I could share after.
Any questions from the floor? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you, Damon. Really appreciate your time, and thank you again for being such a great host for us today.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. Now, just before we move to our second speaker, Darren Turrell, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Daily Do, Adrian and Andrew for their support and for all the effort that they've gone to put this on to this whole London Digital Signage Week on. It's been going for 7 years now, and I think, you know, I've always thought it's such a key thing, and we've talked about how the industry needs to come together and work in a unified way. And I think Adrian and the team at Daily Do have really sort of led the way there. And also sponsors for this week, including Advantech, S&A Displays, and Intel, and Clever Touch, and all those guys. And I know there's lots of events going on where there's a lot of energy going into really helping this industry pull together and support our customers and the industry recover. It's been a challenging year for a lot of people. So moving to Technology Corner, once again, Adrian, do we have Darren on the line? Darren, are you there? Hey, Darren, you're there. That's amazing. That actually worked.
You sound surprised.
I'm not in the least bit surprised. And considering that a lot of our interactions are over Zoom or Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, this feels entirely natural and not in the least bit weird. So, Darren, you're in Cornwall, is that right?
Yes, well, no, Devon, but I was going to let you get away with that, but we're actually in Devon.
Yeah, I was going to say same difference, but Natalie, who comes from Cornwall, would literally throw a chair at me, I think, our head of creative services. Darren, I'll hand over to you, but I just wanted to give you a brief introduction to say Darren is an industry expert of many years pedigree. Has worked with a range of key high street brands, including Burberry, Nike, and others. Levi's, how can I forget? So we're very lucky to have him joining us today, and I'm glad to see you dressed up for us as well, so thank you for that.
Thanks so much, Peter.
No problem. It's my distinct pleasure to have you here. So
you slipped that in, didn't you?
I did.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And I thought Damon's speech was really interesting, actually. It echoes a lot of what I'm going to talk about. I think many of us are seeing the same sort of changes and adaptations. But as a quick intro, my background is in creative direction and brand strategy, including everything from TV ads to social media and everything in between. But I've always had a particular fascination in designing physical experiences, and in particular experience design. It's a method that I used for events, shows, and of course retail. I'm going to dive into some of the elements that Damon spoke about, some of the component parts and those methods in a minute. I'm going to start with a personal story. I don't do graphs. So when I was about 13 or 14, seems like a million years ago, my friends and I would travel up to London. We'd go to Camden Market and then head over to a store called Hyper in High Street, Kensington. It was this huge space, very vibrant. It wasn't just a shop. It had music, it had fashion shows, it had workshops with artists and stylists. And it connected to a scene that we were into at the time that was emerging, which was like rave culture, but don't judge me. And I remember a lot of the clothes being a little bit too out there for me at the time, as you can see. I could see Peter in this, but it's not my thing. So lots of leather and fur. And I purchased a really simple t-shirt for about £50, which was a lot of money back then. And when I got home, my mum went absolutely mad. She couldn't believe that I'd spent so much on a simple t-shirt. But what she didn't understand was that I was buying a piece of that experience of those people and that place. And whilst everything has changed from communication perspective, as the guys alluded to earlier on, a lot of our communications and communities are born online. Nothing has changed in the way successful brands communicate with their audience. They define what makes their audience tick culturally, and then create authentic experiences that they connect with. They create fans of their brand. And despite what you hear in the press, I don't think physical retail is dead. It's the only place where you can touch and feel the product. You can meet the staff, and you can be immersed in a complete brand story. And you simply can't do that online. I watched a presentation recently which led me to find this research, which I thought was interesting. Apparently, customers are 6 times more likely to buy with a positive emotional experience, 12 times more likely to recommend, and 5 times more likely to forgive. And they also claim that 80% of people prefer human customer service. And communicating in these cultural ways is in part why some brands survive and some don't. Burberry and Jaeger are both heritage brands. They've got that quintessentially English background. But Burberry invested in its brand. They created amazing events, partnerships, and store experiences. And Jaeger didn't stay relevant, and as a consequence, have struggled like so many others. So physical retail does need to adapt. We know that millennials and Gen Z expect more from retail than just buying products. Our retail environments need to be fun, disruptive, imaginative, and connected. These customers are demanding experiences much like I was in those early days. So experience design from a retail perspective is about considering the environment as a whole and combining a number of component parts. Some of these here. Let's dive into a few, starting with music. This is where my journey began. I used to build music identities for brands, everything from TV ads to artist partnerships to playlists in store. And the stores are often an afterthought. But not for all brands. Christopher Bailey, the ex-creative director of Burberry, used to come into the office and get involved in the process. He realised the importance of the detail. I also worked with Ology, a great music agency who provides services to H&M. They do big campaigns for like Sinkers for Beyoncé, but they also really geek out about the retail experience, and it shows. We actually found that H&M customers have become fans of the in-store music, which sounds crazy, but their customers started creating and sharing their own playlist of the in-store music. And I wanted to share this with you. It's a bit blurry, but I like showing it because it's organic content. So it's a YouTube example where fans have written comments about tracks that they first heard in their local store. Take a look at the comments. You've got H&M London, H&M brought me here, H&M Singapore, H&M Chile, H&M Greece, ha 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 ha, and so on. So this organic sharing of content brought people around the world to talk about the brand in a credible way. And this under the radar brand communication is really powerful. On a slightly different approach, one of my favorite projects was working for Alexander McQueen. On this occasion, we took inspiration from the physical space. It was very neoclassical in its design. So we created soundscapes that morphed throughout the day and connected with the environment as a whole. In summary, great brands understand the way to connect with culture and in particular music. Now I'm going to focus on interactivity for a bit. I worked with Levi's over the last couple of years on customization. What we call DIY culture has always been part of the Levi's brand from the 70s till now. So patches on jeans, distressed materials, and trucker jackets, for example. And we explored whether we could, whether tech could amplify this, and the print bars were born. In this instance, you can see a t-shirt and they're in 3D. You could rotate them, add messages, manipulate patterns and artwork. There's variations for hoodies, tote bags and jackets. And it's become a nice canvas for collaborations and events. New artwork content means it's always fresh, relevant and tied to campaigns. We also printed on different materials. We tried denim, trucker jackets and stitching. The instant gratification of designing something yourself and then being able to print the results in minutes has been extremely successful. It's rolled out to 100 plus stores globally and is regularly used in their events as well. I also work closely with M&M's on a number of concept designs, resulting in a light emitting pod with an interactive surface where you can decorate the sweet for gifting. But the main feature is taking a selfie within the space and printing it on an M&M. People absolutely love this. We see groups of people in there manipulating the artwork and the faces on the M&Ms. It's really playful. And the combination of being able to create this experience and monetize it again has meant that it's rolled out to flagship stores. Moving on to scent and light. One of my first projects was for Selfridges. We created a number of immersive spaces combining props, VM, sound and light. Initially, we were going to place a large LED within the space, which was super bright and high contrast, but it didn't tell the story we wanted to tell. The film we created was about nature and the content was soft and ethereal. So instead we sourced a piece of material that they use in theatres. And when you projected onto it, you could see the image from both sides. And as air passed through it, it created this beautiful wave. In regard to scent, we wanted to create the scent of sweets in one of the areas. And in this, rather than using those diffusion machines, we ended up just getting a massive bowl of sweets. So the moral to this story, if you like, is don't always lead with tech and massive screens. Sometimes it's best to use the real thing. And the story comes first. You enhance with the tools, not overpower. Love them or hate them, I'd say Hollister has been one of the most successful brands at delivering retail storytelling over the last 10 years. The stores are dark with theatre set lighting on product. The music was profiled perfectly for their target audience. They used screens, but they weren't spamming you with sort of like adverts. You were transported to a Californian beach and they used scent, arguably too much of it, but all of those component parts came together to create one compelling story. Without those digital and sensory elements, it would just be another store. And I remember like parents and complaining about the lighting and the music. But the whole point is it wasn't designed for them, it was designed for their kids. And as a consequence, they had queues out the door, as you can see. Relating your brand to a story is relatively easy if you're a lifestyle brand like Hollister, because there's sun, sea, surf, or even a quintessentially English brand like Burberry, who always used to ask us to think about using the weather, stuff like that. So they have a rich material to draw inspiration from. But what if you don't? What if you're a mobile phone company, for example? Buying a phone can be pretty forgettable and transactional. But wrapping it up in an experience, changes that, as Google did here. You'll forget buying a phone, but you won't forget having a laugh with your mates in a pink laundrette like here, right? Or an Instagrammable moment within the space. So again, we're wrapping the product up within an experience. One of my favorite stores at the moment is Gentle Monster. The first time I encountered their store, I didn't know what it was. It looked like an art museum and had these intriguing kinetic art installations. So again, they're wrapping their product up within a compelling world. They didn't have a story, so they made one up. It has nothing to do with glasses, which they sell, but they know that people like me gravitate towards these sorts of spaces. If you get a chance, check out what they're doing online. It's quite something. Old retail mentality would have stacked the store full of product, but then I wouldn't have walked in, and that's what I'm talking about, and that's what Damon was talking about earlier as well. In 2019, I worked closely with Debbie Moore, Pineapple. We designed and developed a new store in Covent Garden opposite the dance studio. As you can see, the initial store was a bit dark and dingy and piled high with product. So we set about designing a new store, consulting on the VM and the experience design, and trying to elevate the brand by getting them to stop putting sale signs up and reducing the amount of product on show. Scarcity makes the product seem more valuable. And you can see the resulting seductive pink clean glass box we created there. And we created a digital window scheme where models seemingly walked from one totem to another, appearing in different outfits. I persuaded them to move away from just putting one massive screen in, which would have blocked the view into the store. And I think this approach is more complementary to the physical space. It also promotes a collections in a better way, which is that human-sized content. But this isn't just a store. There's a lot of energy and vibes in the dance studio opposite that we can now spill out into the streets. With this in mind, they're looking at calendar events to include DJs, dancers, food and drinks, stalls, things like that. And when searching for the best location, the landlords helped provide footfall maps, which really helped. They were fully behind the process. They too could see how an event space would energize the area. So you've got this nice connection between dance studio, the store, the street, and importantly, the community. Gamification, gaming now takes up a lot of our leisure time, right? Twitch, Discord, and all that. And brands are onto this in a big way. You may have seen the Animal Crossing hosting fashion shows during lockdown. So brands are heading where Gen Z hang out. Animal Crossing has 11 million users. And we're seeing this spill over into retail. Burberry have trialed a couple of things. One related to WeChat, where a character follows you around the store that you can interact with. Another is a game here that you can play on their large screen, the Regent Street. And we're working with brands. There's just lots of sports brands that are looking at gesture recognition. It's relevant to them. And other forms of mixed reality, which I've had various levels of success with. I know that Peter and I are both working with some great brands at the moment on gamification. So please stay in touch and we'll share the results with you. It's an exciting time, we're both working on projects like this, but it's quite scary though, because you're trying to produce this sort of work in lockdown, which is quite tricky. I'm not going to cover AI and analytics, that will be covered later. But ultimately, we can now create these amazing spaces and then measure the performance, as Damon was alluding to earlier. We can refine them and keep making them better and better. Before finishing now, I would like to share some trends with you when things eventually get back to normal, if we can remember what that is. There will obviously be some adjustments and repositionings from brands, but do expect to see installations that blur the lines between retail, culture, and entertainment. Brands will continue to take inspiration from artists. The image above is from James Turrell, an artist specializing in light. The images at the bottom are a fairly recent Nike installation. You can see parallels, right? In regards to virtual try-ons, we're not there yet, but we're getting closer. You may have tried the Gucci app for footwear, which does an incredible job. Clothing, however, is proving much harder. It's so much better than what I was seeing before lockdown. They've really advanced this, and there'll be lots of opportunities to be in physical environments, see yourself, and virtually try stuff on. Also, don't forget the human. I haven't mentioned staff as part of this, but it's quite obvious that they can make or break an experience. And I think that as our transactions become more technology-based, I think we'll find people wanting to get recommendations from actual people. Proximity, Insight, and Hero are creating software that blurs these lines. And shopper personalization is where a lot of brands are talking to us about right now. If you're interested, please get in touch and I'll elaborate on that. I've often talked about remotely updating experiences rather than just screens, controlling sound, music, light, visuals to morph environments so that they can mean different things to different people at different times. And a company called Souk have seen an opportunity here. They're creating spaces that will appear locally, giving opportunities for pop-ups and local businesses. In the morning, the space can be used for yoga. In the afternoon, a fashion store. And in the evening, a music venue. So it's completely adaptable for people's needs. So there's going to be a lot of empty retail space out there, I'm afraid, but we know people are itching to get out and do stuff. And I'm hoping that this, combined with lower rents, will create more opportunities for creativity, which in turn will make people want to come back and spend their money, which sounds simple, and it is when you focus on experience, not just selling stuff. There are a lot more elements to this, too much to go into here, maybe, but I hope that gave you some insight into my world. Thanks so much for hearing me out.
Thank you, Darren. That was very insightful. Thank you very much. A little round of applause for Darren, perhaps. Live from London for you, Darren. It's all for you. And I think I heard the internet clapping as well, which was nice. Does anyone have any questions for Darren whilst we're starting out? You guys do need to start thinking of some questions. We're expecting a lot of you, especially the Beaver people. Come on, guys, you can do this. I had some questions for you, Darren. God, you've got bigger.
Has it got anything to do with my T-shirt?
No, we're going to skip past that. It's a sweater anyway, isn't it?
I don't know.
All right.
I want to know whether Darren's wearing trousers.
Do show.
I am. I can prove it.
Uh-oh.
Well, yeah.
Beautiful.
No, I am jealous of you guys meeting up in real life. I'm really looking forward to, rather than presenting to a screen, because it's like, you can just get so much more feedback and have discussions, and you can choose what clothes. You can actually choose some trousers as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we didn't Marisif, we didn't do this last year, obviously, and it feels really great to be back in front of real people. And normally, as Daniel will attest, I have a bit of a meltdown prior to doing public speaking, but actually I genuinely was looking forward to this because it's nice to see people and talk to people. So Darren, just in terms of, COVID, pre-COVID, experience design, experiential retail, what change have you seen in terms of retailers, in terms of how they think about experiential retail today? Do you think there's been a shift in thinking? Are they more engaged?
They were already looking at, I think, they're seeing the parallels that we've already spoke about. If you look at Selfridges have always created experiences, amazing window schemes, and on Masters at in-store events. Debenhams might not be an exact example, but they just sell things, right? That's all they've done, and they're not around anymore. I think brands are seeing that. They've had time to think about what's happened over COVID, and judging by how busy we are, then I think you can gauge from that brands are realizing that A, they need to be a little bit more local, create experiences locally, but B, they need to create experiences. We're all saying the same thing, which is kind of good. Would like to be more argumentative, but I can't really, can I?
It does feel like it's been a bit more supercharged since the turn of the year, and you know, all things being great and equal, as vaccinations start to have an impact, and we see retail really truly return, and everyone moving into the maskless space, hopefully, then we'll see that interaction having true meaning. And
I think like people, the whole touch and feeling products and what you do about that, and there's quite a lot of operational things that are usually outside of my remit that are coming into the fold. How can we be creative around that? That's been quite interesting to hear what brands are doing there as well.
In Technology Corner, did we have some questions?
What's Darren's thoughts on augmented reality and virtual reality in this space?
Good question. I worked on the first mixed reality fashion show for London Fashion Week 2 years ago, and it's tricky because you have to wear headsets that get quite hot after you wear them for quite a long time. Mixed reality is great because obviously you can see people around you and you can connect with products, and it's definitely going to happen. At the moment, they're not very comfortable in that regard, and the best way to do it is through your phone. And we are talking to a couple of brands right now and creating games where you can, AR games where you're using the phone as the device. So that's been my experience with it. The headsets are great, but it's one of those things where, I mean, you can't make sweeping statements about these things because it really does, as you know, it just depends on the brand, doesn't it? My experience with mixed reality headsets has not been, unfortunately, that great yet.
So you're talking Microsoft HoloLens, that kind of thing, which has got far more commercial, industrial applications rather than retail potentially. But
they do. I think Oculus, the other one, the name that escapes me right now, might be Oculus Rift. I think they were looking at more entertainment-based stuff. And I have had, I used, the best experience I had with one of those devices was Magic Leap, that's them. And it was a music experience where I had visuals all around me, and I could put my hand through these shapes and they morphed and changed. It was quite something.
But was that Motion Leap are now part of Ultra Leap Technologies, I think, isn't it?
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, so they got bought into the haptics piece that Ultra Leap.
Oh, interesting.
Ultra Haptics had. They're now called Ultra Leap, I think.
There's more here. If I could just try and keep it rolling. In larger stores, what's your thoughts on wayfinding? Is that particularly useful? I mean, I know when I go to an IKEA, I always get incredibly lost. And dare I say, if there was ever a fire, I don't think anybody would get out of an IKEA alive. That's a serious point, ladies and gentlemen. So what's your thoughts on wayfinding in, say, bigger stores? And what would be big
really
for that
important.
purpose?
I should know this because I remember it was a problem for Harrods a few years ago when I was working with them. We were looking at apps. I mean, it seems like the most logical way to do it. But I know we were looking at a combination of things, staff, signage, and digital. That was a way to do it. But I guess it's getting people to realise that the app is on their phone and they can use it. So it's usually a combination of methods. But operational stuff like that has to be huge opportunities for digital, doesn't there?
Definitely. Well, listen, thank you, Darren. Next time, I think we'd all like to see you in one of those outfits that you showed us right at the very start. If you could perhaps try a little harder and find the one that was open-chested was my favourite.
I did say that it wasn't the style I was into at the time.
Exactly.
Now,
now is the time. Now is the time. Express yourself. So again, thank you very much, Darren, for joining us from sunny Devon. No, it's been great. Thank you. Have a great day.
And you.
So we're very privileged to be joined by Matt Beresford.
Thank you.
Who has been involved in coaching and the theatre world for many years, and for about 20 years you've been involved in technology, really, in one shape or form or another.
I was indeed, yeah.
And without going to steal too much of your thunder, I think we're going to learn a little bit more about how technology and the human psyche, the human condition, can come together to create a more exciting retail experience. Would that be fair?
Something along those lines. Well, we'll see.
This sounds amazing.
Peter. We'll
this
see where we
sounds
go.
amazing. I can't wait to learn more about this. And over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm delighted to be here. People here. I mean, I'm out of the house. That's a joy for one thing. I thought I'd start with a picture. This is Gilbert's Sweet Shop in Eastney Road in Southsea. This is the most loved and well-known shop in my hometown. And this is Brian and Margaret Gilbert. This is I think it's the 1980s. Now, Gilbert's is especially loved by me because Brian and Margaret's daughter, Lara, was my first girlfriend. We were only 10, so it was all very, very innocent, even in Portsmouth. Now, every Saturday, for as long as I can remember, my mum, on the way home from taking my sister to dancing, would stop off at Gilbert's and we could buy a quarter of something from those enormous jars of sweets that you can see behind Brian and Margaret there. And for me, that would be aniseed balls, and for my sister, normally midget gems. And whenever I go back home to Portsmouth now, I still sense that smile on my face as I drive past that shop. I still get the sense of the sound of the doorbell as you open the door, the vibrant colours of the packets and the jars, the smells, and of course the tastes of being in a sweet shop. All the possibility, all the excitement, and all the joy. And as we've heard already from Damon and from Darren, Gilbert's Sweet Shop wasn't just a transaction, it was an experience, and it still is today. And we know there is still tremendous desire for the in-person experience. Again, we've heard and we've seen some great statistics already. We know that people absolutely want to be with other human beings, both friends and strangers, having experiences, be that at the pub, at restaurants, at sporting events, or on the high street. Online is fantastic. It has been a real lifesaver for many of us over the last year. Great tools like Zoom and Google Meet, of course. But it's not a patch to this, to being with lots of other people and touching and feeling and getting an experience in a retail environment and in hospitality as well. So I want to share with you over the course of our time together today some tools for thinking about the human being at the heart of the retail experience. I work for a company called 4D Human Being, and we're a communication skills and leadership development company. We work delivering training and coaching to organizations all around the world. And when Peter asked me to come and speak to you today, I thought, well, I don't really know anything about retail, Peter, so I'm not really sure there's much value I can add. But I thought, well, human beings are customers as well. And so I thought, why don't I apply some of the tools that we use for talking to people about storytelling and communication and leadership? Why don't we apply some of those to retail? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to share 2 or 3 models with you over the course of a little bit of time that we have together today. And the first one of those is this one, what we call our 4D 2C model. And I'm going to step away from the safety of the podium. So this is the biggest I've ever seen, this model. So I'm going to take this opportunity. It's fabulous. So you can think about these white segments here and this peach segment in the middle. That's you. That's you as a human being. That's your 3 dimensions, your physical dimension, your emotional dimension, and your intellectual dimension. And we'll dive into those a little more shortly. And then around the outside, it's a very simplified model for being a human being. Around the outside is the rest of the world, which we have as people and the environment, impacting on us all of the time and being impacted by us all of the time. Let's start with our physical self. So right now, you are sat here on this space. Some of you are on these bleachers here. I've sat on them for a while. Peter's gone without cushion. So I don't know how comfortable you are right now, Peter, but we are feeling things physically all the time based on the temperature in this space, how much sleep you got last night, if you're ill, etc., etc. We're feeling things physically, and we are impacting on other people physically all of the time based on things that we are in control of, our gestures, our posture, our voice, and things that we're not in control of. Our height, our weight, our age, our gender, our ethnicity. So we are impacting and we are being impacted by the world all of the time. And then we have our emotional dimension. Let's see how the room's feeling here. Name me some human emotions, people. What have we got? Go on, Jim. Sadness. Thanks, Jim. I hope you're not, well, it is raining. We'll come on to that in a minute. So sadness. Thanks, Jim. Any advances on sadness? Joy. Thank you, Daniel. Can rely on joy from you. Any others? Human emotions? Excitement. Thank you. Curiosity. All right, super. And we can carry on and on and on, naming thousands and thousands of wonderful human emotions. And again, we've heard from Darren, we've heard from Damon about the importance of creating emotions in retail experiences. Just like the physical, we are impacting the emotions of other people all the time and being impacted by other people emotionally all of the time. And then finally, our intellectual dimension, our experiences, our knowledge, our education, our intelligence, and also our values, our beliefs, our biases, our prejudices. Again, intellectually, we're having an understanding about the world and how it works, projecting that out and having that changed by the world around us. And you can think about this in many ways like your autopilot, right? Things are happening to you out in the world and you're responding physically, emotionally, and intellectually, and half the time you're not even really aware of that. You'll have had that experience of driving along the road. I used to do a lot of travel down the M3 when I worked in tech for Tech Data. I'd be driving down the M3 and I think to myself, I don't know who's been driving this car for the last 20 minutes because it's not been me. My physical self and my intellectual self is just carrying on with the driving. And then something happens, someone brakes sharply in front of me, a pigeon flies across the road, and I wake up. And then I dial up our fourth dimension, our intentional dimension. This is the dimension which separates us from every other species on the planet. This is the dimension that is aware that we are aware, that we have a higher level of consciousness, that we can choose at any moment to have a different impact on other people and on our future self. We know we have a future self that is impacted by the choices we make right now. Any of you who've got dogs, no, dogs don't have this. Dogs see chocolate cake, dog eats chocolate cake. It isn't aware of future dog that will regret eating the chocolate cake or of anyone else who might have wanted to enjoy the chocolate cake. It just eats the chocolate cake. We are unique in this regard. We have this intentional dimension. Now, around the outside, we're being impacted by these two contexts all of the time by other people. All of the time. They're impacting us. People that we love, that we're very close to, and people that we don't know. People that we are the government who make decisions on our behalf. People we get into arguments with on social media. The people in this wonderful store here. They're impacting on us all of the time. They're making us feel, think, and choose to do things. And then the environment. So the weather's been a challenge for the last 2 or 3 weeks, particularly for those poor souls trying to run hospitality venues. The environment makes us feel things all of the time. And that's the temperature, that's the lighting in here, that is the seat that we are sat on, that is everything else that is around you. And you can see we've represented it here, these arrows pressing in on our three-dimensional selves, our physical, emotional, and intellectual selves. And what we like to say at 4D Human Being is that we are always, always at choice. We have a choice as human beings about how we will respond to whatever the world presents us with. And we make that choice by the use of our intentional dimension. We choose things to do physically, emotionally, or intellectually to have an impact on the world. Let's have a tiny, tiny demonstration of that. Right, everyone who's here, and those of you who are at home, I'd like you to just make sure your feet are flat on the floor, please. Both feet flat on the floor. We're going to ground our feet. We spent a lot of time sat down over the last year or so, and a lot of time, you'll be legs crossed or whatever. If ever you feel yourself under any pressure, if you're coming under stress, get your feet on the floor. Get grounded. Feel the floor. It's a tremendous trick. While you're doing that, I'd like you to imagine you've got an orange in your hand. A beautiful, ripe orange. Hold it out. Enjoy your orange. It's wonderful. You can sniff it if you like. It's gorgeous. Now, rather than eating this orange, I'd like you to pop this orange between your shoulder blades, back here. And just give it a gentle squeeze. Okay, we're not going to crush the orange. We're just going to squeeze the orange. And we're going to allow it just to allow ourselves to breadthen and lengthen our bodies. We're going to bring ourselves a bit more into play. Okay, we're going to sit upright. I can see it beautiful there, Peter. Orange juice running down your back. We're going to sit ourselves up now. We make a physical change, an intentional physical change. And it wakes us up, it broadens us, and it makes us bigger. And what our body is saying to our brain is, I'm in play. I'm here. I'm awake, and I'm ready to go. Half the time we spend here, over our phones, over a laptop, in a way that is a submissive position. Any of you who watched the David Attenborough pieces when they were following groups of animals around, did a fabulous one on chimpanzees. The submissive position for a chimpanzee is that. And we spend half our time these days in that kind of position. So we squeeze the orange, we get ourselves woken up, we make a physical change intentionally that has an impact on our emotion and our intellectual state and that of other people. So that's our model. We use it in lots of different spaces, and I wanted to apply it today to retail. So here's a customer. And our customer, of course, has an intellectual self. And that intellectual self will be thinking about things like price and product breadth and quality and availability. And all of those aspects where he can experience that online and he can experience it in person, in store. My offer as a layman retail shopper is that many of these intellectual pieces I can get just as well online. In fact, in very many cases, I can get that more cheaply. I can get wider product breadth and very often more cheaply. However, he has three other dimensions. He has a physical dimension, an emotional dimension, which will drive an intentional dimension. And in store, we have a real opportunity to impact this customer's physical and emotional dimensions by the two contexts, by people and by the environment. So, another audience interaction piece. What people might be interacting with this customer that might impact him physically, emotionally, intellectually while he is in store? Security staff, yeah, thanks, Dan. Shopkeeper, shop assistants, yeah, they're going to have an experience with him, super. Other customers, absolutely. Other customers are going to have an impact on him, definitely. Who else? We're here talking a lot about digital. Who's creating the digital content that is impacting on this person as well? Who might have driven him to this store? Who might have encouraged him to go to this store? Agencies, marketeers, advertisers. There's a whole huge range of people that will impact the experience this customer has while he's in store. And what about the environment? What What might impact him on the environment? Darren took us through some really wonderful examples of this through his presentation, I thought. Scent, yep, super. Anything else? Lighting, temperature. Signage, indeed. Yes, Daniel, signage. Signage could also help, and that could be anything. We had a question about wayfinding, which may include signage. I love that idea of the Google space where someone can go in and take selfies of himself and his friends. Really great Instagrammable experiences that this customer might have that is going to impact him emotionally, physically, and intentionally. Super. Okay, any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on what else might impact this person in terms of people or environment? The layout of the store, yeah, great. And those things can be positive as well as negative, right? Absolutely positive as well as negative. Now, we want to create an intention in our customer, but an intention to do what? And here I'd like to share another very, very simple model with you, which we tend to use a lot in storytelling, in presentations, to push people beyond the basic imparting of information. And we call this required, desired, and inspired. So, what might our first level be with our customer here? What do we require of him? What would we take as a decent result from our customer? To buy that yellow jumper. Yes. Thank you, Dan. Yeah, it might be to buy that yellow jumper in what I'm guessing. It looks like Gap, doesn't it? So it might be to buy that yellow jumper. What else might it be? What else might be just that's a good experience? What if you work at somewhere like, we've heard Burberry mentioned, somewhere like Burberry? Would they require a customer to buy something every time she or he goes into store? Would that be the minimum level? What would the minimum level be? You know this better than me, Peter, I don't know. Great, so I get a brand affinity. I know you were talking to me about going into a shop recently, it's a Paul Smith store, and being handed a beer. And I don't know whether you bought anything that day, but you had a positive experience. You told me and Daniel about it, and maybe it made you more likely to go back. Okay, so we've got a required level that we might set for this customer. And then we've got a desired level. What might that be for this customer? He's bought his yellow jumper. What else might we want him to go and do that we think, yeah, that was a great result, an optimum outcome? Yeah, so a recommendation, some sort of referral to friends he sees at the pub or over dinner. Yep, Dan? A return visit, yeah. So return visits. Anything else? Anything else we might want to see from this customer? Some sort of social media interaction. Great, okay. Super, and that might bring us on to this last one, inspired. So what's our wildest dream for this customer? He buys his yellow jumper. He has an extraordinary experience in store. What does he do next? What might he do? Buy the matching trousers. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, might buy the matching trousers. What else might he do? Become an advocate. Yeah, become an advocate. And he might do that in any number of ways. Jim already mentioned social media, and that could go very broad, right? That could go very broad across a whole range of different platforms. And we might make that easier for him as well, of course. If what we want to do is encourage someone to advocate our brand, how might we do that more in store? How can we make that very easy for that individual? And of course, digital content here is a very obvious way of us being able to do that, enabling this individual to take a picture of himself against a magic mirror and send that selfie out to his partner, to friends, get their recommendations on, should I go with the yellow, should I try a different color, etc., etc. There's lots of different ways in which we can think about a customer as required, inspired, and desired. And what I'd like to ask people to do now, both in here, in fact, I'll tell you what we'll do in here, we'll think about this store. Okay, we're all here together. So in here, we'll think about this store. What do we think, Damon and the team who run this store, what do they have as the required, desired, and inspired level? And while we're letting people think about that here, think about this for your own store, for your own retail environment, or if you're supporting a retailer for a retailer that you're supporting. What might required, desired, and inspired be for them? So, what do we think for here? What do we think for here? David mentioned things have changed a little bit from when they first launched this store. So if we were advising Samsung on what required might be for customers coming in here, what would we say? Learning product. Yeah, walking away with a good feeling about the brand. Okay. What about if we were moved to this desired level? What do we want someone to do as they've walked away from this fabulous store here at King's Cross? Buy something online. Okay. So they've made a purchase online. I don't know if people can purchase in store, but they've made a purchase. And then what would inspired be? What would Samsung have to see to think, yeah, we have inspired that individual? What would they have to see, do you think? Okay. So maybe someone's made a booking for a future event, or they've gone further to Jim's point around the social media piece, something in that kind of space. Okay, so they've made a brand switch. I thought the kind of timeline of, I think it was a YouTube timeline that Darren was showing with the H&M Greece and H&M, all the various countries. That, for me, sits probably in this inspired space. Someone's gone in, they've heard a record, and they've been inspired to go online and reference the brand in relation to that song. And I think that's exactly what that brand would have been looking for in terms of that inspiration. Now, this inspiration is going to come, as we've heard a few times today, from the emotional dimension. That's what's going to really drive this. It's not intellect. It's not a good price. It's not just a good price and just good quality. It's connecting with the emotions. And by the emotions, we very often mean the chemicals that are created in our brain. Chemicals like this one. Any guesses on this chemical? Dopamine. Well done, Daniel. Well done. You're very clever. Your A-level chemistry has served you so well. So dopamine released in response to reward. Okay, people have become very familiar with this. Facebook likes and retweets, etc. Very, very good at keying into dopamine. And of course, we feel this very much when we've been shopping and we've bought our products and we've got our bags and we're heading home. We are flooded with dopamine, and it increases our pleasure, increases our recall. And it isn't just, of course, about the purchase. There are many other areas in which retail can help to give us reward. We heard about gamification earlier on. Second one. Gosh, some of you should have paid much greater attention in A-level biology, is cortisol. So released as a result of tension or conflict. We saw a lot of this last year around the panic buying. Okay, so huge amount, toilet rolls and getting hold of tin goods and pasta, huge amount of cortisol being driven, panic that was being driven. So this is not necessarily something we would want to encourage although a little bit of it around a sales event, I think retailers are generally quite happy to generate. So there's some digital content encouraging you to grab this product while it lasts. We see a lot of it around Black Friday. But we can also think about this, I think, in a retail environment in terms of getting rid of cortisol. Adrian was talking about wayfinding from a question earlier on. My experience in many hardware stores is I hate it. I am flooded with cortisol because I need to go and get the screw that I need, and I can't find the damn thing. And I would love to have some way of interacting via an app or a display which can enable me to release my cortisol by getting the product that I want. This one. Endorphins, response to pleasure and laughter and joy. And again, I think that's those sensory pieces that Darren was talking about in terms of some of the work he did with people like Selfridges, really wonderful for this. This is what comes back to me when I think about Gilbert's Sweet Shop. Those smells and those tastes. It's just the pleasure recall that I get. And then finally, oxytocin. Thank you, Dan. Oxytocin. Released in response to feelings of connection, empathy, trust. And we've been missing a lot of this in the last year. This is very much the kind of human-to-human contact. We were welcomed beautifully in this store today by a couple of people, actually. An immediate feeling of connection, empathy, and trust. And we may well do this via the human, but we can also think about doing this digitally as well. And I can't remember whether it was Damon who was talking about it or Darren. The idea of on your phone getting something which, as you're leaving the store, thanks you for your purchase and talks to you about after-sales service. So what ways can we increase feelings of empathy, connection, and trust? So this is what's going on in our brains. And why is shopping so emotional? Because very often we're not buying shoes or a phone or a TV. We're buying something much deeper than that. We're satisfying a deeper need. Now, many of you might have heard of human developmental models from people like Erik Erikson, Don Beck, Ken Wilber, or most famously of all, Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. Now, we use these 5 at 40 Human Being, and I'm going to display them now, and you'll get a feel for what these are and what they mean. So at the bottom of Maslow's pyramid is safety and security. Purchases that we make that are about driving safety and security. And again, that panic buying we saw last year was right in this space. I need to get the food and the toilet rolls for my family, okay? Me and my family to keep them safe. So when we're going shopping for something, it may be that it's being driven by this, okay? We think we're going for a pair of shoes. Maybe we are. But what we're actually doing is going to buy safety and security. Or we're going to buy connection and belonging. And this has been very missing over the course of the last year. The next layer on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Connecting to other human beings. And that might also lead us on to value and meaning, being valued by other human beings and having meaning and having purpose. So things like fashion might sit in here, being seen and valued by other people. And then our last 2, growth and development, which kind of stands to reason, and then service and giving, right at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, beyond and into self-actualization, where we're thinking about faith and charity and politics, things outside of ourselves that drive our behavior and may very well drive our shopping choices. So just take a moment to have a look at those 5 and just think about, where do you spend your money? No need to share these, no need to shout these out, Jim and Dan. Just think about where you spend your money, where you spend your time. And maybe think about, is there one of those spaces that you would like to spend more of your time and your money? And so if we think back to our shopper earlier on with his yellow jumper or whatever else he might have bought, he may well have been going to buy value and meaning, to look great in something, to be valued by other people for what he was wearing, for the brand that he was wearing, for example. He may have simply been going to buy something to keep him warm in the safety and security space. He might have been buying something that would enable him to fit in with another group of people. We see this particularly with young people, the need to dress the same as your peer group or as a group that you respect. He may have been going to look for something around growth and development. May have been something he wanted to train or work out in. So there's any number of different drives that might be influencing his choices. He's not just shopping. He's on a mission to satisfy something very deep within him. And so when I look at some of the digital content and some of the product choosers, I'd also be interested, is there a way of connecting those product choosers with something beyond brand and color and into some of these deeper human drives? Are you looking for something that's going to keep you warm in the winter? Are you looking for something that you're going to train with? Are you looking for something that's going to make you look great when you go out on Friday night? Are you going to the pub, or are you going to a Michelin-starred restaurant? Can we tap into those deeper human drives when we're thinking about how we engage with customers, both digitally and in terms of the wider environment as well? So there's our key human drives. Now, a little recap. I've had a look at 3 different models, which really are about different ways of thinking about putting the human being at the center of the customer journey, the customer experience. The 42C model, which you can see displayed here, and creating intention in other human beings by the way that we impact them in terms of our people and environment, physically, emotionally, and intellectually. What's our required, desired, and inspired opportunities with a customer? What's our baseline that we'd love for her or him to do as they leave the store? What would be the next tier, and what's the tier after that? And then finally, our deepest needs. What's right underneath when we're going shopping, when we're going to the supermarket, when we're going to buy a hammer, when we're going to get a manicure? What's underneath that that's really driving our needs? And how can we tap into that as brands? Now, if any of you need any support in terms of communication, leadership, or encouraging your team to be more creative, I'll be around here after the event. And if people want to get in contact via YouTube, I'd be delighted to pass on my details. But I would also like to go back to Gilbert's. Now, Brian Gilbert, unfortunately, passed away a couple of years ago. But Gilbert's is still going strong, run by Brian and Margaret's eldest daughter, Jackie. So if you ever find yourself in Portsmouth, if you are going to visit a museum, the beach, or an outlet at Gunwharf Quays, do take a little detour to the other side of the island to Gilbert's of Eastney Road in Southsea, and you too can feel like a kid in a sweet shop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Fascinating and insightful, and clearly ties quite neatly into some of the subjects that Darren was also talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was drawn to thinking about the Hollisters example that he talked about, and I thought that was a really, really interesting little microcosm of a lot of the thinking that you've just talked through here, especially in terms of triggering and, the Gilbert's sweet shop experience. I mean, I've got similar feelings about a sweet shop in Richmond, North Yorkshire, and those are really emotive places to be, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the power that emotion has.
What I thought was interesting about one of the things that Darren said about Hollisters was he was also talking about the people who created that brand experience in store. He described it as a slightly overpowering scent, but the dark light. They were not interested in the parents. So they were very clear, who is it we're targeting? It's the young people. What intention do we want to drive with them? And how can we impact them physically, emotionally, and intellectually to drive their behaviour? Because it isn't one size fits all. I think you need to be very clear on who your audience is. When we're talking to people about communicating, presenting, doing a one-to-one, doing a big presentation, we are constantly saying to people, who is your audience and what do you want to make them do? Hollisters understand their audience. It's not the parents, it's the teenage children.
And it's a power of recall as well, isn't it?
Huge.
The nostalgia, power of recall, and putting people into a sense of place within a space is key.
Yeah, and that cue outside as well connects with a number of things, doesn't it? It's what you think about as social proof, where if there's a cue, it says to everyone here, this is desired. Well, suddenly then, I've got an even stronger emotional impact because I am with all the people who are, I don't know what kids would call themselves, but I'm with the cool people, right?
Cool, yeah.
I'm
rad.
with the people who want to be here,
funky,
who want to be in this space, and therefore I belong, and I can go and talk to my friends about this on Monday. That's how old
we are. Cool.
That's how old
don't ever doubt it, Matt. We are
never
cool.
Doubt it.
Down with the kids. Don't worry about that. So, any questions here from the floor today in Samsung's King's Cross flagship store? Overwhelmed by hands being thrust in the air? No, haven't got time for them. Sorry. We're going to go to Technology Corner instead.
Fight our way through.
We are overwhelmed. Thank you, everybody, with questions. That must mean that you've literally covered this in great depth and detail, and we are most grateful.
I will take that.
Now, mercifully for you all, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So the people here can enjoy a rest break and perhaps grab a little drink. And those of you online can go and check your emails and decide that they're not worth answering, because in 10 minutes at 4:20 BST, you can come back to hear me talking to you about the state of retail and what being a rational optimist really means.
Peter,
so, thank you very much.
Can I just say that there's some snacks on the table over there as well as cold drinks. So please, cookies and things, help yourself.
They won't eat themselves, people. you want to grab a seat? Oh, yeah, sure. That's fine. Hello, welcome back. Welcome back to Samsung's King's Cross flagship store. Welcome back to the Beaver Trison Retail Masterclass 2021. Welcome back to time away from your emails and time well spent, hopefully. So thank you for giving us your time, and as one fine Alan would say, it's a time to be together, right? So I'm here to talk to you today about the rational optimist and how in retail things are looking up. We're going to do a little revisit, a little recap. And of course, it's a bit trite to say that retail has taken a battering over the course of the last 14 months, and of course it has. But the picture is actually a lot more nuanced, isn't it, than such a bold statement suggests. And it's certainly true that I'd like to take this opportunity and take stock of the reality that retail finds itself in, and this post-pandemic world, and also to set out my stall for why I maintain that my firmly held belief in rational optimism, perhaps even the sunlit uplands, holds true. So, you know, big reveal. Physical retail is needed, right? We want to go to physical retail stores. I mentioned earlier on how I never really was that keen. Well, actually, as soon as it was taken away from me, I really was keen. I was suddenly a real retail advocate. I want to go to a shop. When's the shop open? Well, it's not open. When's it open? So here we have images from last June. This is of an IKEA. And they were one of the first stores actually that opened, and we waited with bated breath to see if people would actually go back. And I mean, you can see for yourselves, they really did. But there's a leaner and meaner, more focused retail space emerging. And the brands that are more forward thinking. Now, Primark really don't have an online presence, and they really did need to focus back on that retail space. But actually, they did very well. They actually didn't spend the money necessarily to compete in the online space. And so when retail did reopen, they were able to move product, and the queues, again, show us that. And this is from this year. This is in Nottingham. Again, people queuing. You know, we really do want to go back to these stores. So we're looking to create those closer connections to customers. We're looking to justify the reasons why we're going back to those retail stores. Online, Ocado, and every other online retail outfit out there has thrived. The Ocado stock price tells you that story. And in fact, you can see if you look at Ocado's stock price, every time there's an unlocking of the retail space, it goes down. And when there's a lockdown, it goes up. Now, that's pretty logical, I guess. But there's a massive trend towards that. And I was just having a chat with Gideon earlier about the shift, the permanent shift towards online, especially in groceries. But that's not the whole story. The need to go to supermarkets has grown, and people have, again, rediscovered why they want to go to supermarkets for the fresh goods. And that online competition piece is real, it's fierce, and the customer acquisition costs are really high. You know, you're going to have to spend serious dollars to get those customers. And access to the products and services didn't always follow, and it wasn't exactly what you necessarily wanted. I bought shoes, I bought jackets that didn't fit, and that's got nothing to do with the beer and lockdown. I know you brought that beer story up, and I just thought, that is it, I'm in trouble now. Got secondary information about beer. Anyway, we've seen double-digit growth across a range of categories. So electronics, I mean, it just exploded, didn't it? I mean, Damon talked to us earlier on about the display segment in Samsung, and you couldn't buy a screen. I mean, as soon as lockdown was announced, everyone was buying screens. Webcams went out of stock. Laptops, Chromebooks, all of it was in high demand, and it remains in high demand. People upgraded iPads. Apple products flew off the shelves, and Apple had one of their best, most profitable periods in their history because people were buying product. The groceries market we talked about and how that shift back to the supermarket actually was real, and Morrison's recently talked about how they've actually done far better than they expected through the pandemic. DIY, gardening, bikes, Peloton, related hardware, again, bikes, who thought? But you can't buy a bike for love nor money at the moment, still. That is a real shortage issue. And wellness and fitness and pharmaceuticals all did exceptionally well. It's thrived, but it's not the whole story. So people are still thinking about returning back. So we've kind of trained ourselves through the online journey to appreciate that retail experience. And we're starting to look at the brands that we want to go to physically experience in a whole different way. As I say, we've all tried the shopping online for shoes and clothes and things that actually touch and feel matters. And we now are very happy to go and get those. And experience is everything. So here we have an example of Misguided. And it's important to recognize that retail is now all about a destination. It's no longer just essential, but it's chosen. So I'm not going to the shops because I have to. I'm going to the shops because I want to. It's an experience. It's an entertainment experience. It's a destination that I'm choosing to set out on a day and go and visit. And people have become keenly aware that they want to interact with shop assistants, to talk to the staff. Again, alien to me, really, let's be honest. I really didn't want to. I wanted to walk in. I mean, the Apple experience where you walk in and you scan the barcode on the app and you walk out with the product was as near perfect a retail experience as you could probably make for me. Whereas now, I want to go and talk to the assistant. I want to engage with them and have a conversation. And I think that's partly because we've been trained that actually it's a really important part of everyday life and we miss it. Let's hope we keep it. So it's that socially stimulating, nurturing, sort of inspirational piece that's really, really crucial. And providing a clear and direct connection to the product, the information, and the detail that you can only get within a brick and mortar environment. That's so important. And it gives you an opportunity as a retailer to educate, to inform, and to delight. And going back to the pieces of gold that Matt was talking about, that delight piece, the quarters, no, not, I didn't listen, did I? No. The endorphins, the dopamine, the oxytocin. Thank you, Daniel. And also, we've been seeing how the QR code has come of age. So for many, many years, those of us in this industry have been using QR codes and trying to find ways of engaging people with QR codes with some success. Well, guess what? COVID's really delivered it for us now. Everybody knows how to use a QR code, and there isn't a single person probably on the planet that hasn't tried to use a QR code or been told to use a QR code on their phone. So it's accessible, it's easy to understand, and it's now a key part of our retail experience. That universal understanding will drive dynamic interactions, which QR codes are going to help us with. NFC, which is obviously a similar technology based around mobile phones, will probably adopt in the same way, but it's going to be a little slower, in my opinion, because it's not as accessible and not as easily understood. It's probably more related to payments in people's minds than it is retail experience type stuff. So we're seeing and we are delivering for clients QR code experiences which are meaningful and are successful. Kiosks and interactive solutions were not shunned. I think there was a lot of wringing of hands at the beginning of the pandemic about whether interactive kiosks were dead from now on. Were people ever going to touch a screen ever again? Are they safe? Are they hygienic? Those are good questions in any case, regardless of whether there's a pandemic. But actually, they did. And kiosks offer people within QSRs or in retail to keep people away from dense queues, to manage the flow, to offer choice, and to keep your personal space yours. And we've seen broad deployments, actually, of kiosks and interactive solutions. And certainly some brands like Burger King are now starting to play with a blend of interactive touchscreen and contactless experiences where you hold your finger near the space but don't touch the screen. And I think we'll see a further deployment of that kind of technology where you're using camera sensors and similar to drive that. Contactless being key to these kind of retail experiences, being able to experience something in a larger space to drive the moments of joy that Matt was talking about, where people create an affinity to a brand or a space through these digital moments, is really interesting. And it drives value. We often talk about technology as an industry, and we talk about the screens or the players or the software or the sensors or the data. When actually we really do need to change our vernacular, and we need to start talking about experiences, and we need to talk about surfaces. And we need to remove these technology terms, and we need to start talking in terms that people actually can translate to a more human experience. And that human experience in this case could be, finding out whether a rug's going to fit in your space. Now, people don't care whether it's a laser projector or an interactive screen. What they care about is it the same size as the one I'm about to buy? And so there's something very visual about doing this and projecting it on the floor and showing people. And retail is moving very much towards this space. And we can really lift people. So when they go to a retail space now, that experience is important. We've all been through the lockdown. We've all had this mental challenge. It's really important that we're entertaining people and lifting their spirits as part of that. We talked about scent as well earlier on, and how scent is really important, and a willingness to make an investment into that space by using these technologies to drive that. Here we've got a different shape. We've got a curve, and we are looking at a curved LED. It's a fabulous example of a curved LED. Shapes and scale are really important at the moment, and they're driving a lot of the retail work that's going in at the moment. And it's not about flagships. It's about every store. It's about every store having that experience, and every store delivering that value to the customer. So this is a beautiful flagship store, and I'm sure Samsung will now open many, many more across the country. And when they do, we'll be expecting the same from Samsung. Here is a white screen. It's a deliberate ploy to see if you're watching. And it was going to be a video that played, but it doesn't play. But this is a fabulous video, which you're seeing a still from, of the Max Center, which was delivered by our sister company Nexum Trison in Spain, and gives a really, I'd urge you to go to YouTube and type in Max Center Nexum, where you will see the beautiful vertical space that's been created here, which is on the back edge of a lift elevator shaft, and provides a 3D environment for visitors to this space, and really creates a magical moment of wow when you're in there. And really what Matt was saying about spaces is really important. Retail it's emerging, it's evolving, and it's really rethinking who it is and who it's talking to. And this is an example of one of our customers, Entain, who are working hard to reimagine the space that customers use when they go into a bookmaker's. And it's creating some really energetic and interesting experiences for people, which are far, far away from the experiences that people would normally have associated with such a space. And that's storytelling. We talked about storytelling. Darren mentioned storytelling. We've talked about storytelling 2 years ago. It was actually the subject of our Retail Masterclass 2 years ago. It is everything. That creation of that moment of connection with the brand. And it really isn't about screens. This is a surface, and it actually goes all the way down into Sephora, and it continues as an experience. So you're not looking at thinking, this is a screen. This content is designed for this space. And everything about it talks about you're in a unique and exciting environment. And that social advocacy piece, it's driving a lot of the brand experience work that we're doing, and people sharing magic when they see it, and creating, Nexum, again, They're doing such great work. Mikkel and his team are really driving this industry in creating surfaces that don't look like screens but act in ways that you would associate with screens. We talked earlier on, Darren talked about it, pop-ups and retail space. There's a lot of empty space on the high street. It's very sad to see, but I think we're going to start seeing that space utilised for more innovative spaces by brands such as IKEA. This is from Hong Kong. This is very recent. I saw this on Dave Haynes' blog and I thought it was a really interesting piece to talk about today. This is a very, very small unit, but clearly is focused around creating a retail experience that actually drives a brand affinity. And it's flexible, right? And immersive. Darren also stole my thunder and talked about Souk, which was nice of him. I didn't realise he was going to do that. But that's fine. I've got a bigger picture than Darren, so it's a better example to talk about. They're an early startup, and they've got 4 adaptive digital retail spaces, and they've got another 3 or 4 in the pipeline around the country. And it's sold on a per-hour basis. So this is a really interesting idea about how you can road test ideas, how retailers can play with ideas and see if it works. And I think we'll see this more and more. And whether that's retailers equipping their spaces that can be adaptive around campaigns, or whether it's retailers using spaces like this so that they can be adaptive around campaigns, I think this is the path towards the future. So Darren and Damon have talked about the future a little bit, and I'm not going to use a well-trodden and well-known sci-fi film, but it's not about personalised adverts, right? It's not about that I'm walking down the street and I'm being sold a Mercedes-Benz because I'm a certain demographic, but it is about personalised experiences, and it's about brand engagement where I've made an active choice previously, and it's about meaning and being able to create that affinity wherever possible on that customer journey, and really starting it from before the point of where you're in the store. Soundscapes, we've talked about a lot of digital, in terms of digital surfaces, but actually the audio space is really important. And a little anecdote, very recently I managed to get a couple of days away and went to a shop called Vinyl, which the smart amongst you will associate to wine and vinyl. This guy had set it up, very, very small shop in Manningtree. And as I went through the vinyl and commented on whether it was Red Hot Chili Peppers or Royal Blood or whatever, he'd start playing that audio just gently in the background from his little sound system. And I thought it was really quite cute. And I think that space could be commoditized quite nicely through your Spotify playlist choices, through understanding your mobile device and being able to understand where you are and what you like and what your recent listen to was, and being able to engage with you on a personal level to create affinity. Again, you're noticing this word all the time, these retail experiences that have meaning. So a broader, more holistic digital environment that adds to the journey and isn't just part of a buy something piece. I put my clicker down, that was a mistake. So just to talk about something a little bit more challenging, this industry and every industry currently is facing some significant shortages of semiconductors. And I borrowed this again from Dave. We have broad worldwide shortages, and it is part of the planning process that we really should all be thinking about now to make sure that we have the ability to deliver these experiences for both our customers, retailers, and the customers that they serve. So it's about planning, it's about utilising and working with businesses of scale and size like Trison, like Beaver Trison, and the scale and logistics that we can offer to ensure that you are able to meet those key project deadlines, because retail doesn't wait, and we have many sort of very short turnaround projects. So it's important to understand that and put that into your thinking. So, in summary, you'll be glad to hear, retail stands at a bit of a crossroads, really. But we at Beaver are really excited about it, and we think that the future looks really, really amazing. And I think a lot of what's gone on has created the space and time for people to think about what a retail experience truly looks like, rather than us evangelizing about it. I think it is now obvious that there are many, many opportunities for it. And it's colourful, it's contextual, it's deeply engaging, and it's about benefiting the consumer and your customers in a way which wasn't until recently possible. And working with partners and companies that can understand that holistic journey and that can drive that value back to you. We've heard about analytics and data, and it's crucial, but it isn't the story. They feed into why that story matters and how to then refine that story. And then as the well-known Matt Ridley, everyone's thinking who's Matt Ridley, said in his book, rational optimism holds that the world will pull out of the current crisis because of the way that markets in goods, services, and ideas allow human beings to exchange and specialize honestly for the benefit and the betterment of all. And I think that that's where this industry can really help. We can really be a key part of how experience drives value, which drives further recovery and economic growth for all of us. So grab the opportunities, all of us, that present themselves. And I think there's every reason for all of us to be a rational optimist. Thank you. So have I got a question myself? Is that how this works? I guess it does. Wonderful. Well, let's go straight to the Google boys. Google boys, are you there?
Google boys. There we go. Google boys are here.
Wow.
Peter.
I don't know if you can see yourselves, but you're looming large above me, towering like the titans you are.
I apologize in advance. I should have thought about my background. Sorry for all the chairs. I've got 3 boys who like to come and sit and tell me about their school day. So
it's okay. There's no judgment here. There's no judgment, Lyndon. So we're joined by Lyndon Fraser and Will Smith, who are both key members of the Chrome and Cloud Ready team at Google, and both have a significant multi-year experience within this space, servicing very large retail and hospitality clients, amongst many, many others. A lot of knowledge worker pieces as well. So, gentlemen, I will hand the floor to you, and then we'll perhaps have a little chat, shall we, about how it all comes together.
That sounds good. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Beaver Trison, for including us on your agenda. Sorry we couldn't be there today. Andrew panned around the room earlier, so I think we've missed some good kind of elbow bumps, and it would have been nice to physically be there in person, but next time. But thank you for including us. As Peter said, I'm Lyndon Fraser, part of the Chrome Enterprise team at Google, helping retailers truly understand Chrome OS as a relatively new operating system within the enterprise space, albeit having been around for 10 years now, really as a cloud-based OS. So I work very closely with retailers in terms of helping them get up and running with it, both at head office level, but also around opportunities to enhance their in-store experience through Chrome. So for those of you, I guess, who have ventured out today, you've probably ventured into your offices and other offices already. So you probably will remember what an office looks like. For others like Will and myself, it's been a while. Google sent us all home pretty early in March 2020. So when we do finally return, which we do hope will be shortly, I think there'll be a bit of a hybrid model being put into place at the Google offices. But our office desks and cabinets will be a bit like a time capsule, right? Probably with uneaten snacks from the micro kitchen, and who knows what will be greeting us when we do head back. So many of us will be heading back to these offices, but for others, we'll continue working as we have been really for the past year or so, right, at our kitchen tables in our makeshift offices. And we've worked pretty closely with a range of businesses that had to adapt very quickly to enable this new way of working. But it means that for many of us, we've stopped thinking about going to the office and started thinking about our own office. And this stat here, this is a pre-pandemic stat. And now that most of us have had a trial run of working from home for the past year, it will be interesting to see whether this trend has strengthened even further. Or I'm sure for a few of us, returning to the office will be quite a welcomed relief. It's been reported that a third of workers, however, and this was actually a pre-pandemic stat, would take a pay cut to have the flexibility to work from home. So in order to attract and retain the best talent, businesses are going to need to be mindful of this and provide flexibility wherever possible. Most IT leaders understand that times have changed, and it's been very much highlighted over the past year that employees really want and more than want, need to be able to work from anywhere and on any device. And it's created a new kind of breed of worker, a new type of worker, which we refer to as the cloud worker, which is essentially any individual who uses a laptop or tablet, accesses cloud apps daily, and spends more than 3 hours a day working in the browser. So for most people, if they reflect how they have been working, especially right over the last year or so, a large number of us can now be classified as cloud workers. And that's really, for us within the Chrome Enterprise team, driven quite a sharp growth, given that Chrome OS is a cloud-first operating system that provides simple and secure cloud-based management of devices. It means we've seen quite a big uptick, right, in terms of the adoption of Chrome devices as businesses suddenly were needing to empower people working from home in this way. Chrome OS has been built really for the cloud since day one. It offers a number of benefits: speed, so Chrome devices boot up in under 6 seconds. Speed for the users, speed in terms of administering devices as well. So Netflix is a big customer of Chrome devices. One of their senior administrators were quoted as saying it takes much longer to get rid of the packaging than it does to set up and deploy a Chromebook, right? So that speed has been something that a lot of businesses have been turning to Chrome OS to receive. Simplicity of management is another big benefit, particularly for retailers who have their employees spread across a network of locations, store locations. The simplicity of having a centrally cloud-based management console has been very well received within the retail world. Security is always top of mind for everybody, right? Chrome, being built as a cloud-first OS, treats security very, very differently, and it's a multi-layered security story that runs all the way from sandboxing that appears within the Chrome browser, all the way down to the TPM chip that sits within every single Chrome device. Within retail, retail definitely has been one of the fastest growing verticals over the past few years for Chrome. Some of the more common use cases, one that you will have heard quite a bit of today, and Peter's talk a moment ago referenced it, but kiosks and digital signage. So turning to something like Chrome to empower the ability to improve the in-store experience as retailers are beginning to look to attract consumers back to the high street. I think we will see a further rise, right, of that experiential retail, and that's where, again, the simplicity of Chrome devices have fit very, very nicely. Thin client replacements, any thin clients or kind of dumb terminals are now being replaced by Chrome OS, where you can run both a virtualized session with Citrix or VMware or another VDI vendor. But they also enable access to applications through the browser or Android apps even. Contact center, we were having a lot of frantic phone calls from retailers who were saying actually our contact center workers previously have been tethered to desktops in large contact centers. And suddenly, based on government guidelines, they had to move all of those individuals to be set up and empowered from home. So with Chrome devices, you've got zero-touch enrollment, which means an administrator can get that device set up, drop ship to that individual's home address, and as soon as they connect to the internet, they'll automatically be configured to exactly what that domain wants that user to actually see from an application standpoint. And then the front line, this is the workforce really that typically just wants to get things done, right? They're most used to mobile technology and web-based applications. That's what's most familiar to them. And that's really where Chrome, it gives that experience almost like a smartphone experience, but through that kind of laptop or tablet form factor. So again, retail's large frontline workforce means it's been a very common use case as well for Chrome. DFS is a nice example of a business that has really embraced Chrome Enterprise in response to kind of growing trends around social retailing. They wanted to accelerate their own digital transformation and improve the in-store experience, both for their employees, but also for their customers. They replaced a lot of their existing PCs, any devices that were kind of tethered to a back office with lightweight Chromebooks and Chrome tablets, bringing their store associates more onto the shop floor to be able to work with customers. The initial setup of these devices, their CTO did a talk with us recently, and they were averaging the setup for the Chrome devices. It was taking the time to get one of their existing devices set up being around 2 hours to being just over 20 seconds for a Chrome device, right? Which really led to some significant productivity gains for them. So they've seen it really as a way of the back office PC replacement. They've been able to bring in more of an assisted selling motion to the shop floor as well, and also kiosks and customer self-service, which is very apparent within all of the Sophology stores and really growing within DFS as well. The next customer example is actually courtesy of Beaver Trison, right? I often say if Carlsberg did physical retail sites for e-commerce retailers, they'd probably look a lot like this. This is the kind of made.com store on Tottenham Court Road, and a fantastic example of what can be done with these retail sites to bring everything to life, right? And if you ever get a chance, if you haven't been in there already, a nice way of being able to see made.com having this huge plethora of products within their site, but you go into the physical site and it's that lovely simple layout, right? You've got digital wall displays, you've got almost like an Apple store where you've got the kiosks that you can set up and browse through all of the various products, and then they'll have employees in there set up again with devices for assisted selling motions as well, right? So a really, really nice example of kind of online and physical bridging together, right? Which I think we're going to continue to see more and more of within the retail space. In addition to the previously mentioned benefits of kind of speed and security, we also work with retailers who are looking for that significant cost savings, right, around total cost of ownership. So these are savings that extend beyond hardware. There's a lot of money to be saved within the simplicity of Chrome, right? So no need for antivirus or encryption software, in addition to all of the time saved deploying devices and managing devices. 24/7 support for all customers. And then the sustainability side, I'm really pleased to see that this is coming up increasingly in conversations with businesses and retailers that we're speaking to. Chrome OS devices are carbon neutral, energy efficient, and they create minimum waste for the environment. And it's something that really not just within the Chrome Enterprise team, but right across Google and Google Cloud, sustainability is a real focus for us. And with sustainability in mind, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague Will Smith on the Cloud Ready side of things, representing Google's newest acquisition, which is Cloud Ready. So I will pass across to Will now.
Thank you very much, Lyndon. Hi, everybody. Next slide, please. So you've still got control of the slides, Lyndon. So hi, everyone. My name's Will Smith. Yes, as Lyndon mentioned, I'm part of the Chrome OS team now. Neverwhere was acquired back in December, and I'll chat a little bit more about that and what that means. But yeah, in terms of where I sit within the business, I kind of lead up the EMEA team for Cloud Ready in Europe. So here to help with pretty much anything to do with Cloud Ready as part of a Chrome OS deployment. So I've got a few quick slides here that really just talks around what Cloud Ready can be used for. And one of the main things really is accelerating and expanding deployments where Chrome OS has already been established as a great option for you. Those use cases that Lyndon mentioned around kiosks, around the thin clients, around the frontline workers, and the contact centers especially, those are really great use cases where Cloud Ready can really assist as well. So, about Cloud Ready Neverwhere. Neverwhere was originally founded in 2011, so quite a while ago now. And then we realized that our original product wasn't quite the best one when we realized that Google had produced these things called Chromebooks back in 2012, 2011. So in 2015, we launched a product called Cloud Ready, which was basically designed to take what you have with a Chromebook, but give you that same experience on your existing devices. We thought that Chromebooks were the future of computing and decided that we really wanted to be a part of that. So we really worked hard at that and had a lot of success. A lot of retail distribution, a lot of education, and a really growing enterprise presence. And then in 2020, as previously mentioned, Google acquired us. So I've now been a Googler for 5 months, although I've been working very closely with the Beaver Trison team and also Lyndon for many years already. And yeah, we're at about 1.5. It's got to be at least 1.5 million Cloud Ready installs around the world now. So we're doing pretty well. So what does it mean that Neverwhere is now part of Google? So obviously we had that original mission, take the Cloud Ready operating system and give you the same experience as you get on a Chromebook, but on existing devices. So be it a desktop or a laptop or whatever it might be. And it's evolving. So we're now part of the Chrome OS team. I now work as a colleague to Lyndon rather than a partner. It will officially become Chrome OS. So if people were interested before, Cloud Ready was a fork of Chromium OS, whereas now we're going to kind of work a lot closer on the actual Chrome OS operating system rather than the Chromium. Customers will be upgraded to Chrome OS seamlessly, or what the new version of Cloud Ready in the future. So there won't be a kind of new installation process that people will have to do, which would be good. And then if people are already really, one of the key selling points of Chrome OS is really the Google Admin Console and that centralized management piece. People will be able to access Cloud Ready from within that same portal in the future, which I think will be fantastic for them. Next slide, please. So just a quick bit about Cloud Ready and what it actually can be used for. So those use cases that Linda mentioned before, obviously they're all use cases that could use a variety of different types of hardware. And our ultimate goal is to give the user an experience as if they think they're using a Chromebook. So they could be using a 10-year-old Dell Vostro laptop, desktop or whatever it may be, and you can install Cloud Ready and they boot it up and think, oh, this feels just like a Chromebook. And they don't have to think about maybe the next device that they get given by the IT department, which is a Chromebook. It's a really seamless jump from device to device. And as we know, in retail, devices are shared around a lot. So maybe you've got a Chromebook and you've got a Cloud Ready device in a store, and there shouldn't really be a situation where people are like, oh, one feels very different to the other. it should feel very, very similar, and that's what we're aiming to achieve from a usability standpoint. So what we really do is we kind of say anything that's around 10 years old is applicable for use with Cloud Ready. We actually support devices for up to 13 years from when they were first released. So a device that was released in 2010, we would support with updates through to 2023. So there's a lot of devices out there that I know kind of have 6 or 7 years of life in them, and you could probably get a few more years out of them by installing Cloud Ready. And it's not even a case of really getting more use or sweating those assets. I think it really improves those assets. It makes it more secure by the Chrome OS design. It makes it often a much faster device and a much easier device to use, not only for the users, but also for management. So we've got a selection of devices here, 450 devices that we've pre-tested to make sure they work great with Cloud Ready. And if your device isn't on that list, feel free to let us know and we'll see what we can do. So as Lyndon mentioned, sustainability, there's a large part of what Chrome OS does really helps to make sustainability a key part of the messaging of Chrome OS. And I think Cloud Ready only really adds to that. So Chrome OS is a cloud-first piece of software. It's a cloud-first operating system built relatively recently in the world of operating systems to be cloud-first. What that means is that by offloading things to a kind of cloud data center, you can make sure that you're using sustainable cloud computing and making sure that you've got a very low overall carbon usage for your business rather than using the on-device power. Chromebooks also, and Cloud Ready by definition as well, have really great power management capabilities built into the operating system. They're designed really to kind of sip power and not really jump into these high power workloads when it's not really needed for a lot of the work that people are doing. And then the other key thing as well with Cloud Ready, it's difficult to get the exact data on these things because it's different for device to device, but every device that's purchased has a carbon cost to it. There's the minerals that have gone into that machine have been dug up from somewhere, plastics and all these things, and all the carbon in doing that digging and putting those devices together, there is carbon in those devices. So rather than thinking about devices on a 4 or 5 year lifespan, extending that out to maybe 7 or 8 or 9 can have a huge impact on the carbon footprint of a business by thinking, let's use our devices for a little bit longer. We don't have to replace them. And that's not only a great thing for carbon, it's also a great thing for budgets as well, by not having to replace your devices as much as you might think you do. And Chromebooks as well obviously have a great kind of 8 year lifespan as well built into them, which is fantastic. So that's it really from me on the Cloud Ready piece. We've got some questions.
Gentlemen, thank you for that. That was great, and I appreciate the detail you've gone into on that. Obviously, I'll move. Hang on, where shall I put myself? Over here. As big advocates of the Chrome space and the Chrome environment and ecosystem, it's been great to see how it's evolved over the past really 5 or 6 years and become quite a serious heavyweight contender in terms of delivering a reliable, almost appliance-based environment for our customers and their customers to utilize and experience. Do you know, what kind of feedback do you get from retail in terms of the kind of key things that they think are the most important when they're looking at these kind of environments? Has that changed over the last year or 18 months?
I'd say from my side, Peter, the ease of management is the big thing, right? The simplicity of managing devices, right, that are spread across multiple locations, multiple different users, is by far and away the kind of number one benefit that is spoken of any business that has deployed Chromebooks in any type of scale, right? So thousands of devices. I'd say second to that would be the security side of things as well. So we actually end up with CISOs, so Chief Information Security Officers, wrapping their head around the Chrome security story and truly understanding it and saying they'd sleep a lot easier at night if there was more of it out there, right? And so we end up with some very strong advocates on the security side of the business. So I'd say security is also a very, very big driver of why a lot of businesses are landing on Chrome.
And Will, from an existing infrastructure perspective, there must be a real driver now, both from a sustainability perspective, but also from perhaps a cost saving perspective, to utilize existing infrastructure with whatever Intel-based infrastructure they may have.
Yeah, exactly. I think like what Lyndon said, it's the management piece, and then that ties into the overall just reliability of the infrastructure. A lot of the time they might think that this device is 4 or 5 years old. Oh, it's had a blue screen. Oh no, that device needs to go. But once you install an operating system that isn't quite as intensive on that machine, such as Cloud Ready, you can often get a much more reliable experience out of that device and use it for much longer, therefore saving budget and carbon, and also headaches as well, for just having to deal with that blue screen and things.
Yeah. And do you see that the retailers are bringing together and tying together that knowledge worker and then their retail environments a lot more now, that kind of logical connectivity between, the knowledge worker journey that they've been on, where they've got the benefits and the cost savings and the time savings that the Google Chrome environment brings, and then they're applying that, whether it's with people like ourselves or others, to that kind of retail experience piece?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the flexibility of the OS means retailers will all kind of land with Chrome slightly differently, right? Some will actually say, let's begin with the stores, right, and the store experience, and they will, I don't know, focus on something like kiosk and signage first. Others will have been looking at it more from the kind of corporate head office perspective, and it's now spread out to the stores. Typically, though, when a business begins to deploy Chrome devices, that simplicity of management shines through. That then focuses their mind on where else could they find use cases for the technology, right? So we've seen it kind of both ways. Sometimes it begins within the retail stores and spreads to head office. Other ways, it's the other way around.
Yeah, and I think that we talk about retail experience in terms of big screens and moments and lovely, joyful things happening in stores. But if the kit isn't working, then that just doesn't happen. So it is important for those environments to be carefully considered. And we've made that shift as a business towards Chrome. And we've seen a reduction in the support instances. We've seen an increase in the uptime. We've seen an increase in really the lifespan of the equipment that we've deployed, and the manageability of that equipment, which plays through to the customer experiences that people have in retail or hospitality or the other spaces that we're working in. So, what do you see as kind of the big next shift? People must ask you all the time, but what do you see as the big next shift, given that, whether it's yourselves moving back to the office space or more generally in retail, if you were looking in your crystal ball in a year's time, let's not go too far, but in a year's time, do you see the developments within Chrome, perhaps from a mobile perspective through to the Chrome environment, playing through?
Yeah, it's exciting working for a business like Google, because you are always party to all the kind of like 10x thinking and all the moonshots that are coming out of Google, and particularly these days out of the alphabet kind of companies, and thinking, how is that going to lend itself within the retail vertical in particular. I think on a more kind of shorter term perspective, Chrome devices, the conversations we've been having with lots of businesses are, we are reopening our office space. We are reimagining that office space. We're thinking of it much more as a collaboration space rather than a space where people will go and sit at their desks and scroll through their emails, right? And so a lot of businesses are now looking at that kind of hybrid model of saying, okay, when employees are coming into the office, what are they actually looking to do? And so we've been engaging in lots of conversations recently around businesses reopening and having kind of racks of Chrome devices where an employee can come into the office and just pull a Chrome device off the rack, log into it, and they'll be facilitating these kind of collaborative working environments, right? There's nothing that resides on that device itself, so nothing holds that individual back from kind of working in that way. So it's it will be interesting to see. I know Google as well, there's been a lot of plans for the reopening of our offices, and I think there's going to be similar to what we're doing here today, actually, this kind of mix of digital and physical, right? Where you will have teams that are physically in the office, but the technology will be such that it will facilitate the ability for people to digitally connect in and feel a part of that team, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming from the Google camp and all kind of tech vendors that are out there, right? They're all kind of challenged with creating this new way of working that we're all going to be entering into.
Well, I really appreciate your time, both of you, today, and I look forward to that sunlit upland that we're all talking about, and I think Google for us certainly is a key part of that, and making sure that it is as positive as it can be. Before we close, let's look at Technology Corner to see if there's any questions. Overwhelmed. So thank you everybody that's taken the time to join us, and thank you Lyndon and Will for today. Thank you to the speakers, Matt, Darren, Damon, for also contributing to such a unique experience, and I certainly hope that we'll have a few more people next time round, and there will be a next time round. So thanks again, and see you next time. Thank you.